Disinformation. I am so tired of the United States government pretending like they understand what disinformation is and that they are the arbiters of truth, because all we have seen lately is lie after lie after lie after lie. I'm going to have Gabe Kaminsky on with me. He is the investigative reporter who is publishing the most incredible stories on disinformation and exposing these lies and doing true investigative work at the Washington Examiner. But first, I want to talk to you a little bit about this, because this was my area. This is where I did the majority of my work, especially covering President Trump. In fact, any investigative piece that I ever did was because I would stumble and then sometimes just fall face first right into government lies. And I just couldn't believe it that they were trying to push lies like this to the public. And it's so disheartening. I want to read to you something, and I want you to be thinking very much about the Hunter Biden laptop story, about the fact that 51 U.S. intelligence officers and senior officials signed on to a letter that said that that Hunter Biden laptop story was Russian disinformation, when I believe they all knew, they all knew that they were lying about that. They were lying to you. They were pushing disinformation on you purposefully, right? It was just like what happened with Christopher Steele and the dossier. Remember when we broke all those stories? The MI6 agent who was basically putting together a dossier of lies for Hillary Clinton, Fusion GPS. Remember all those players? Yes, no one paid the price for that. But guess what? You paid the price. You paid the price because you were being lied to and information was being hidden from you. I'm going to read you this. I want you to think about those two stories in particular. This is from the FBI's website, okay? The FBI's website. You can go there, fbi.gov. Go there, look it up. It's in their About page in their frequently asked questions. How does the FBI differ from the Central Intelligence Agency? The CIA and FBI are both members of the U.S. intelligence community. The CIA, however, has no law enforcement function. Rather, it collects and analyzes information that is vital to the formation of U.S. policy, particularly in areas that impact the security of the nation. The CIA collects information only regarding foreign countries and their citizens. Unlike the FBI, it is prohibited from collecting information regarding U.S. persons, a term that includes U.S. citizens, resident aliens, legal immigrants, and U.S. corporations, regardless of where they are located. I want you to think about that. And now I want you to think about how far the CIA and officials from the CIA, including officers like Mike Morell, by the way, who was a former deputy director of the CIA, went as far as getting 51 intelligence officers to sign on a letter that they knew was a lie to protect Hunter Biden. He admitted to this in the judiciary hearing, right? This is when they were questioning him. Judiciary Committee is questioning Mike Morell. Jim Jordan, fantastic job. Congressman Jordan, I love the work that you're doing and your team in exposing this. And Mike Morell tells the panel of lawmakers, yes, we did this because we wanted Biden to win. We wanted Biden to win. This sounds like, an exact, like they're going against everything that they were designed to do. And not only that, they lied. I don't care if they're former or current. You are never a former intelligence officer, not really. You are always obligated, and especially as a deputy director of the CIA, to that agency. Why is Mike Morell getting involved in U.S. politics this way? Why is he wrangling up people to sign on to a letter for Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who probably got his job as Secretary of State because during the time of the campaign in 2020, October 2020, when he got Mike Morell to do all of that dirty work for him on this letter for President Biden, who was knowingly taking money from adversaries like China and Ukraine, that they were covering up and that they were interfering in a U.S. election because they didn't want you, the American people, to know how far and how deep this all went. And not only did they have the CIA, but they had the FBI helping them too. Their friends at the FBI doing dirty work as well. Do they think we're fools? Do they think you're a fool? Do they think you're just too busy to realize what they have done to you and me and our nation? I want you to think about that. And we're going to be right back with Gabe Kaminsky. He is going to break down his newest and latest stories. I think they're fantastic. You are not going to want to miss this interview. Trust me. But first, we're going to talk about Allegiance Gold. I love Allegiance Gold. Remember, this is a podcast that has sponsors that are actually going to make a difference in your life. And if you don't think so, don't just trust me. Do your own research. Look at how they're rated as far as gold and silver and balancing out your portfolio. This is so important right now, especially when we live in a country with such uncertain times, right? We've seen what's happened in Canada. We see what's happened here in the United States with our banking system, and it's been terrible. And we know that we are at an apex of so many problems in the near future. A recession is here. There are all kinds of issues looming. The stock market, real estate, folks, gold and silver allow you to protect what you've worked so hard for. And right now you'll get $5,000 of free silver on a qualifying purchase when you tell Allegiance Gold that Sara sent you. That's SARA, that Sara sent you. My friends at Allegiance Gold can help you protect your IRA, your 401k with physical gold and silver, or they can have it delivered securely right to your door. They'll educate you on the benefits of physical gold because they care and they want to build a long-term relationship with you. Allegiance Gold has the highest ratings in the industry. Just take a look at it. 5 stars with TrustLink, AAA rated with the Business Consumer Alliance, and they're A+ rated from the Better Business Bureau. Right now, get $5,000 of free silver on a qualifying purchase when you tell them that Sara sent you. So don't wait. Call or click today, 877-702-7272. That's 877-702-SARA, SARA, or go to protectwithsara.com. We can't control the Biden administration, folks, but we can prepare. 877-702-7272. That's 877-702-SARA or protectwithsara.com. And I've got Gabe Kaminsky with me right now. He's an investigative reporter. You all know his great work at the Washington Examiner. I think it is probably one of the finest pieces of reporting that we've seen recently. He's also the chief investigator behind the smash hit series Disinformation, Inc., which exposes the blacklisting of conservative media organizations from advertisers. Thanks so much, Gabe, for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, I just going back to the series of stories that you've already published. I mean, it's incredible what you've been able to expose. Before I go to this clip with Senator Rand Paul and have you respond to it, and it's an older clip, but I think it fits perfectly with what you've been doing. What in the last, I would say, what over the last few months that has surprised you the most about the lies that the American people are being told, not only about what the media has been exposed, but with the Hunter Biden laptop story, as well as, you know, we have an upcoming election, 2024. I mean, I think the most important thing is for the American people to have like the best base of knowledge so that they and we can make the best decisions when we go to the polls. What has surprised you the most, though, in the last few months about any of the media that is being reported or what media is being hidden from the American people?
What's certainly been shocking and it's been recurring is that things that people on the right were labeled as conspiracy theorists for and were labeled as notions that were disinformation have actually been vindicated. And since the rise of Donald Trump, the quote unquote disinformation movement has ramped up significantly. And, you know, the latest kind of tidbit of this, or just adding on to it, was just more ammo with regard to the Hunter Biden laptop story. The fact that 51 intelligence officers, and I'm sure we'll get into this more in the show, but that 51 intelligence officers essentially wrote a letter calling Hunter Biden's laptop Russian disinformation after the lead signer, Mike Morell, was essentially urged, seemingly by Antony Blinken, Biden's Secretary of State, who is a top operative of Biden's campaign. And so that tells you a lot about the disinformation movement and the labeling of ideas as false when they're actually just masquerading as they're rather partisan ideas.
Right. And just so everybody, all of you out there understand exactly who Gabe is talking about, Mike Morell was the deputy director of the CIA. He's had a lot of connections, not only, of course, in the agency, but also with the Department of Defense, and is very well known in those circles, and has a lot of influence. And the fact that he came forward basically when he was being interviewed by, I believe it was the House Oversight, if I'm not mistaken.
Judiciary.
Oh, House Judiciary. Sorry, with Jim Jordan. The House Judiciary under Chairman Jim Jordan, when he was being interviewed, he came was straightforward, discussed his connection to Antony Blinken and how Blinken had him wrangle up these 51 intel officials, which, by the way, included even Michae Hayden, who was considered a GOP guy. He's a Republican guy, head of the NSA, also head of the CIA. I interviewed him on several occasions. He signed on to that letter. John Brennan, Clapper, and others signed on to this letter that was basically a lie. And they knew it was a lie. I am absolutely 100% positive that when this letter was issued stating that Hunter Biden's laptop was Russian disinformation, they all absolutely knew that what they were signing onto was a lie. This is my next question, Gabe. And I know you're straight up journalist. You're telling, I go further. I've been doing this a long time, and I'm more of a columnist. Does it surprise you, though, that these senior officials within the United States government could do something like this and never be held accountable for it? Not really.
Right. Yeah, it's going to remain to be seen the extent that they're held accountable. And I note that Mike Morell, in his testimony to the House Judiciary Committee, he said he was asked by Chairman Jim Jordan why he was motivated to write this letter. He said, in part, because he determined after talking to Secretary Antony Blinken that it's possible that the contents on Hunter Biden's laptop were Russian disinformation. But the second part that he mentioned, which completely invalidates his first point, is that he said that is because he supported then candidate Joe Biden for president. And so one is certainly fair to question the motives, it would seem, of someone who's saying, oh yeah, we determined that this is disinformation, but also we supported the candidate. I mean, certainly you would think that a letter alleging that the then candidate's son his laptop was disinformation would be solely focused on that fact and not pertain to their support.
And this is why I call BS on the first part of his statement. What does it say about our intelligence apparatus that 51, including very high-level senior officials within our intelligence community, to include John Brennan, Clapper, Mike Morell, and all of these folks, actually believed that it was Russian disinformation and not really Hunter Biden's laptop? I mean, if they can't even get that basic fact correct, how do I expect them to even protect the United States from adversaries such as China, North Korea, Iran, Russia? I mean, that was a simple, basic fact. Either the laptop is his or it's not. Either it's Russian disinformation or it's not. And if they did believe it was Russian disinformation, I think they should make those documents public to you. You should publish them in the Washington Examiner. Why did 51 of them actually believe it was Russian disinformation? If they have some kind of document and they were tricked and there was trickery involved, then maybe they should come forward and admit to that they were being tricked into believing that. That's why I call BS on that. I want you to take a listen to this. This is Senator Rand Paul, and this goes to your point of your whole series of stories. The disinformation, and remember they were going to create the disinformation board in the United States and decide what is accurate information, what is disinformation. This statement from Senator Rand Paul during a hearing is probably one of the best I ever heard at countering any government narrative that the government needs to be in control of of the narratives that the media pushes out. So let's listen to this.
Do we have policies? Do we have guardrails? Do we have standards?
But here's the problem.
Ensure,
we can't even agree. We can't even agree what disinformation is. You can't even agree that it was disinformation, that the Russians fed information to the Steele dossier. If you can't agree to that, how are we ever going to come to an agreement on what is disinformation so you can police it on social media? I think you've got no idea what disinformation is, and I don't think the government's capable of it. Do you know who the greatest propagator of disinformation in the history of the world is? The U.S. government. Are you familiar with McNamara, the Pentagon Papers? Are you familiar with George W. Bush and the weapons of mass destruction? Are you familiar with Iran-Contra? I mean, think of all the debates and disputes we've had over the last 50 years in our country. We work them out by debating them. We don't work them out by the government being the arbiter. I don't want you guardrails. I want you to have nothing to do with speech. You think we can't determine speech by traffickers is disinformation? You think the American people are so stupid they need you to tell them what the truth is? You can't even admit what the truth is with the Steele dossier. I don't trust government to figure out what the truth is. Government is largely disseminating disinformation.
I don't know. What's your response to that after working on your series of stories, which, by the way, everyone needs to read? Get Gabe Kaminsky at the Washington Examiner. Just go there, read his stories. You're going to be a better person. You're going to be a smarter person for it. What is your response to this, Gabe?
One point that the Senator Paul made is he said that there are different determinations, different views of what constitutes disinformation. And that's something that really sticks out to me because the primary issue I've seen through my reporting on these various entities that are aiming to classify disinformation and end up classifying conservative media outlets as disinformation is their basis for judging what disinformation is really, it's overtly partisan. The notion of disinformation is intended to be, it is the idea of, objectively false information that can be used in a way that can harm society. And we can disagree over, using that term or whatever. But what the reality is that a lot of these groups and what the government has been involved with in terms of classifying disinformation is rather ideas they disagree with. And he made an interesting point about, the Steele dossier. I think that actually really juxtaposes with the Michael Morell situation. I mean, the Steele dossier was labeled essentially was, opposition research that the Hillary Clinton campaign and the DNC fed to the FBI in order to link Donald Trump to Russia. But we didn't even know that at the time. All we knew is that news reporting indicated that, Russia, Donald Trump is, stooging for Vladimir Putin. Little do we know that actually derives from intelligence that the opposing candidate compiled. I mean, that is nuts.
Yeah, it is completely nuts. And John Solomon and I, in the very beginning, that was our first big breaking stories was on the Christopher Steele dossier. The fact that the United States used a foreign spy, an MI6 spy that had been paid for by the Clinton campaign, to compile a bunch of garbage, which is exactly what Bob Woodward even called it. He said, it's garbage. And Bob Woodward, you would probably suspect him of being more to the left, right? But he was looking at it and he goes, this is garbage. Do you know, Gabe, that they were passing that dossier around all over Washington, D.C., trying to get any reporter to bite on it, to put that story out? And before they briefed President Trump in 2017, January, on that dossier, they being Clapper, Brennan, and Comey, who briefed him on the more sexually enticing parts of the dossier, the big lie, that came out of supposedly out of Moscow, before nobody would print it because everybody was scared. They were like, this looks like bullshit. It doesn't even look real. And then what they did was the senior most level intelligence officers briefed the president on this in 2017, and then BuzzFeed decides, okay, now we can print it. And then Jake Tapper at CNN decides now I can run it. Why? Because those intelligence officers briefed the incoming president on that paper and made it news. That should scare everyone, that the United States actually, bureaucratic members of the US paid for by our tax dollars, actually pushed disinformation on the American people and targeted a sitting US president.
No, and that's right. And I think Paul's juxtaposition between the dossier, or he actually didn't, but he was talking about the dossier. It goes really well with what we saw with the Hunter Biden case, because the Steele dossier, that piece of opposition research was extremely influential, and it resulted through a lot of polling. You can see this. It shows that people really believed that Donald Trump was very closely linked to the Russian government, and that he was sort of stooging for Russia. And what we see with the Hunter Biden laptop, and there was it was majorly influential, and news reporting showed that. And what we see with the Hunter Biden Russian disinformation laptop thing, the labeling of that laptop, is that you saw the intelligence letter. And after that intelligence letter, which we now know Biden's campaign seemingly sort of influenced to some degree, we don't know how much, it results in Twitter and other social media platforms throttling a story in the New York Post about Hunter Biden immensely, and resulting in other stories. And, there's been certain polling that shows that would people have had better access to that story? Not that it would have overturned the 2020 election, but it certainly is one of those stories that you want voters to see when they go to the polls. So in general, there is a kind of a crazy censorious butterfly effect to both of those stories.
So a butterfly effect or straight out election interference effect?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't know if I'd go that far, but I do think that it's totally fair to say that, the American people should be informed when they go to the polls, and certainly the censoring of that story, result in people potentially not being the most aware. And there has been actual surveys on this, so maybe that point does stand. Yeah.
Well, and I know you can only go so far. I can actually say it. I actually believe it is election interference. Why do I believe that? Because the American people do have a right to know everything about either candidate. If it was true, 100%, let us get the truth out there. But what they did was they lied about it. They lied about information that probably would have swayed voters in one direction or another. And I think even more importantly, it harmed another candidate because it made the candidate look like, of course, Trump and his team used that information to target Hunter Biden and Biden on the campaign trail. But when you say, they're using Russian lies to target another person running for the presidency, it again reinforces the fact that is a lie, that somehow President Trump was involved with the Russians. Once again, they're using the same lie to push a narrative that they believe, in my personal opinion, and this is not in yours, so everybody go read Gabe Kaminsky at the Washington Examiner, because he doesn't talk about this, but in my personal opinion, to alter an election. As a result of your reporting, Oracle, and I think Safra Cohen's awesome, a CEO of Oracle, has actually severed ties with Global Disinformation Index. So that was the group that was supposedly assessing whether or not information was disinformation or not. How big of a deal is this? I mean, it was because of your reporting. So that's pretty cool.
Thanks. Yeah, so Global Disinformation Index is one of many entities that do this blacklisting of conservative media outlets. And what that means is they feed blacklists meaning they feed lists of websites that they determine to be disinformation peddlers to advertisers and urge them to defund conservative media outlets. And GDI happens to be funded by the US government and also does still engage in that activity. And so, for example, Microsoft and Oracle both previously subscribed to this list. Those are two, major. Their ad platforms are very significant in the ad space, and basically they, on behalf of third parties, place ads in news outlets. And so what they were doing is relying on this disinformation group, which is overtly partisan and has faulty views on what constitutes disinfo, to shape where they place ads. So Oracle recently announced that they're no longer going to be working with GDI. In terms of Microsoft, it's they launched an investigation and temporarily have suspended their relationship. So I do follow up with them frequently to see, whether that's going to be final. But certainly one would think it would be kind of a PR nightmare for them to reverse course after Oracle already, as a finality shuttered their relationship. I think it would probably generate a lot of bad headlines were they to, untemporarily resume working with GDI. So
did they say they'd be going to work with anyone else other than GDI, or did they say they were just going to assess what was going on before they made any determination?
Yeah, I'm not sure with other groups they work with. It's not something I've necessarily looked into. I do know in terms of Global Disinformation Index, they are no longer blacklisting through their ad platform conservative outlets, meaning places like the Examiner, Town Hall, or Daily Caller can get ad dollars through Microsoft's platform right now.
Right.
But it'll just depend if that's a finality or something, that happened in the news cycle and they kind of resume that relationship. So,
okay, Gabe, I've got another hard pressing question for you. The Biden administration is not stopping their pursuit of the disinformation platform that they want to create. In order to, basically, they want to babysit the American public. You reported last week that the State Department is spending an incredible amount of money on a new curriculum meant to build long-term resilience to disinformation. What is this? What's going on here?
Yes. Yeah, we reported on a grant, $1.9 million that the State Department will be dishing out in, I believe, applications close in June. So it would be after that time. And they're going to award one American nonprofit or NGO with those taxpayer dollars in order to purportedly counter disinformation in foreign countries, including Russia, which, what many would argue, of course, does peddle as a government, state media and whatnot. The point that I got from Mike Benz, who is a former State Department official who has been pretty all over this disinformation space, is he said he would not agree that he certainly agrees with the fact that Russia pushes disinformation, or perhaps other countries around the world. What he pointed out is that people should be concerned about this because the Biden State Department's determinations of what constitutes disinformation, as we've learned, have been faulty. And so now they're going to be teaching people in foreign countries,
right,
and government employees. We're exporting our own failures is kind of what Mike Benz had. That was kind of his idea. So.
Well, not only that, I mean, they must really think highly of themselves. They must really think that they are the arbiters of truth in every other nation on earth.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like a fair, certainly, and I've covered a lot of these grants in the past. We've engaged in, we've recently, I reported on the Biden administration spending money on disinformation training in Cambodia for children in Cambodia. That is a real grant. And then also in places like Uganda, Cameroon. It's across the world. And I think, what people have fair concerns about with these grants is not that perhaps state media in Cameroon is, pushing accurate information. I'm sure it's, there's a lot of propaganda, but they disagree with the Biden administration, how they are partisan on a domestic level, identified conservatives as disinformation peddlers, and sort of exporting that.
Well, and that's a problem that I've seen quite frequently with my sources, whether they're in Guatemala, whether those sources are in El Salvador, whether those sources are in other parts of the world, where the United States, and especially we're going to focus straight in on State Department, becomes very much involved in government policies in other parts of the world. And particularly when we're dealing with Democrat administrations. And you can see that where they've tried to sway governments to do what they want in an effort to move dollars into those countries. So, and if the government doesn't agree to it, and right now Guatemala is facing this, if the governments don't agree with the United States on the type of policy they're trying to push, then they go after them, saying that these, conservative governments aren't, that they're restrictive, that they aren't abiding by human rights or human rights laws. And that becomes a huge issue, whether or not they get funding from the US. So I'm kind of concerned, yes. How is the State Department going to handle this? And do we have oversight of that money? Because it could just be another big black hole where we're moving money and funneling money for programs that may be more intelligence related and maybe spreading disinformation instead of actually upholding, any kind of training for. This is just absolutely insane. Instead of upholding any kind of training that would turn those governments into like law-abiding arbiters of truth, so to speak.
Right, and I think what people have fair concerns about is what we've clearly seen is that the Biden administration and the Biden White House has a very significant focus on countering what it determines to be disinformation. And while it has developed that goal in mind, it is also coordinated. And this is something at the heart of a lawsuit called Louisiana versus Biden, brought by Louisiana Attorney General Jeff Landry, and also then Attorney General of Missouri Eric Schmidt, alleging, based on reporting done by Matt Taibbi and others through the Twitter files, that the U.S. government has coordinated with Twitter and other social media platforms to engage in content moderation, particularly around COVID-19 and around 2020 and the presidential election. So I think based on what we know about how there's been that public-private partnership that certainly has been the face of legal and congressional scrutiny. Now that Biden administration has various grants overseas on disinformation, and coupled with that I think that's where has earned the ire of readers.
You have been doing some recent reporting, and you brought up elections. On the 2024 elections, you just released a report on one of the potential candidates in the race, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Let us know what you found. What did you find? And will you be diving into the finances of other candidates?
So, yeah, I'm doing different stories on the presidential candidates and sort of their donors. I took a look at the fact that Ron DeSantis has been boasting pretty impressive fundraising numbers. For example, a super PAC aligned with Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis is widely expected to run for president. We will see if that is just a media gin up or if it's completely accurate. But there are several super PACs seeking to will Ron DeSantis to the presidency. There's one called Never Back Down, and it recently received, according to this donor, $20 million from a man named Robert Bigelow, a real estate mogul. Bigelow famously gave $10 million in the past to DeSantis' state campaign. So just taking a look at how DeSantis has been increasingly bringing in money on the state level, while there is expectation that he is going to run for president.
Gabe, can you let us know where we can read and get all of your great reporting, and where can they follow you, like on Twitter? Give us your Twitter handle. Let me know what we can do to help get your stories out there so that the American people, that's all of you out there listening to us right now, can be informed.
If you go to the WashingtonExaminer.com, we publish stories daily. We also have a magazine you can subscribe to. And also on Twitter, you can follow me at GE Kaminsky, GEKAMINSKY.
Thanks, everyone, for joining the show. I'm bringing Gabe Kaminsky back on. He has some pretty incredible stories that he's been breaking. And by the way, it's up to you and me to educate ourselves on what is happening in our country. We're living in some pretty precarious times, but I still believe the glass is half full. And I believe that you and I can make a difference. Yes, we can make a difference by not being afraid to know what the truth is, speak the truth, and stand up for what you believe in. Folks, follow me on Truth at Sara Carter Official, on Twitter at Sara Carter DC. God bless you, God bless our nation, and God bless the great state of Texas.